Have you ever caught yourself scrolling through someone's feed or watching them just breeze through life and think, why does it feel like they have their whole life together and I don't? Or maybe you've looked around and wondered whether or not everything you're doing is enough, if you're on the right path, and why it seems like everyone is one step ahead of you. Today, we're diving into the real talk about why comparison sneaks up on us and how it can truly affect our lives and morph into jealousy, envy, and these other feelings that we don't necessarily want to have. Today, we're unpacking why we compare, how it's holding us back, and most importantly, how to let go of it for good. By the end of this episode, you will have a completely new view on jealousy, envy, and comparison, and you'll learn practical tools and skills to stop them from stealing your happiness. Let's get into it. But first, welcome back to the Glow and Tell podcast. I am your host, Sophie diloreto, and on this podcast, we talk all things self-help, self-development, and ultimately becoming the best version of yourself. Jealousy, envy, and comparison have been something that I've been wanting to talk about since I started this podcast because I feel like it's so prevalent. It's something that all of us deal with. I can confidently say that. And it's something that if we don't deal with it and work through it, it will just run rampant in our lives. It can cause rifts in our friendships, our relationships, our work, our social life. And honestly, it can cause us to drive ourselves literally crazy, trying to chase this thing that we think we want, that we probably don't actually want, or trying to reach perfection when it's not even a real thing. I've dealt with lots of, I want to say envy more so than jealousy, really just comparison in general. And we're going to break down in a minute the difference between these things, but comparison is just like the act. It's the act of comparing one thing to another. It's not inherently bad. It's like comparing an apple to an orange. You can find the differences between them, but then you make a judgment based on those differences. So you might say like, oh, apples are crispier, they're crunchier. Oranges are softer, but they're sweeter. I prefer apples because I like the crunch. Or you could say, I hate oranges because I hate the texture and they taste weird and they're soft and squishy. So I think the apple is the best thing. And neither of those judgments are necessarily bad. They're just your opinion. But if you think of the orange and the apple analogy in terms of you and someone else, you're the orange and they're the apple. So you're like, oh, they're so much better, but you're an orange and they're an apple. And you can never be an orange. You can't just become an orange. As much as you try, it will never happen. So we're using this weird fruit analogy, but it's all to demonstrate that you can compare and not come to a negative conclusion. You can just compare and say, these two things are different, and that's okay. Maybe I like these certain things about this thing and I like these certain things about this other thing. And in terms of us, you can say, she has a beautiful nose, her nose is smaller than mine. That's a comparison, and that's fine. I'm fine with that, rather than being like, oh, I'm so jealous of her nose, like her nose is smaller than mine and I want it, and that makes me so mad, and that means her nose is better than my nose. But it's just a little intro to get you warmed up to the topic of today. Let's dive in. We're talking about three different things here: jealousy, envy, and comparison, which I've kind of started to mention already, but I wanted to talk about these together in one episode because in a lot of ways they're really different, but they do have a lot of similarities. And I also think that we commonly think of them as similar or the same, especially with jealousy and envy. So I wanted to dissect the three of these things and talk about how they can show up in your life, how you can handle them, and allow you to learn which feeling you're actually feeling. So comparison is at the bottom of this. Like I said, comparison is just the act of comparing two things and coming to a conclusion, making a judgment. The way that you handle the judgment you come to and the conclusion that you come to dictates whether or not you arrive at jealousy or envy or something else. Jealousy and envy are two different emotions, two different feelings that you can feel, and they're distinctly different. So most people use them interchangeably and kind of think of them as the same thing. They actually have quite different meanings and connotations associated with them, which I honestly didn't even fully know before diving into this topic. So I find this very interesting, and I think you will too. Let's start with jealousy. Jealousy happens when you ultimately fear losing something that you have, which kind of sounds like a weird way to put it, but the most common example of jealousy is in relationships. You probably associate jealousy with relationships because it's kind of like the prime example. In any sort of relationship, even a friendship, maybe you have a best friend and you do everything with them. They're your best friend. You're each other's best friends, and all of a sudden they make a new friend. Someone new comes into your best friend's life and they start hanging out with them and they start having some of their attention. Now your best friend is hanging out with them as well as just you, and you start to feel jealous. You're starting to feel like you're losing something that you perceive as being yours. Your best friend is your best friend. It's yours in a way. So in this scenario, the thing that you already have is your best friend. Like you already have this friendship. So you grow this fear of losing your best friend to someone else. Or another example would be in a relationship, like a romantic relationship. Like maybe you have a boyfriend and you start to see them texting someone. You start to fear that you're losing your boyfriend to another girl. The root of jealousy is insecurity and the fear of losing someone or something. Another example of jealousy could be being jealous that someone is going to take your spot at work. Maybe a new person comes in, they're younger, they're a fresh mind, and they start kind of working their way up at your company, and you start to feel like they're out for your job. You feel jealous because you already have this job. The job is the thing that's yours, and this new person is the person that's threatening your job. So it's another instance when you have something, in this case, a position, and someone or something is threatening it. And actually, as I was researching this, the example that came to my mind to kind of make sense of these concepts has to do with Mario Kart, which, hear me out. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Mario Kart, but to give you a bit of a preface in case you don't know, it's a video game where, you're different characters in the Mario universe and you drive little cars on tracks. And so the goal is to come in first place in the race. And when you're in first place, you have the most to lose. You're the most threatened because as you get to the first place, now you're the target of everyone else. Everyone else is trying to take your place, and you're the target of leader bombs, which are these bombs that come in and drop on top of you to make you stumble and lose your spot. You have the largest amount of insecurity because you have the most to lose and you occupy the highest position. So then you have this pressure on you to remain perfect because you want to keep your place and keep driving perfectly so that you stay in number one. So in my head, I'm okay, a great example of jealousy could be demonstrated by being first place in Mario Kart and having this fear, this insecurity that you place on yourself that your place will be taken by someone else. So maybe that can kind of put it into perspective for you. I know that's a bit of a weird way to explain it, but I think it does demonstrate it. I don't know what it is with me today and these weird fruit analogies, Mario Kart, but we're rolling with it. But the emotions that are associated with jealousy are fear, anxiety, and possessiveness. Now, let's talk about envy, which I find very interesting because this one hit home for me. This one is definitely what I experience way more often than I think I experience jealousy. Envy occurs when you want something that someone else has. So it's a longing or a desire for something that isn't currently yours, whereas jealousy was you already have the thing, you're afraid of losing it. Envy is you desperately want it to be yours and you have this possessive longing for it. It's often coupled with feelings of inadequacy, actually, and examples could be feeling envy of someone else's success. Maybe you see someone who's exactly where you want to be in life. They're in the exact position you want to have and you aspire to be doing exactly what they're doing. Maybe you're an aspiring author and you have a favorite author and you kind of feel a little envious of their success, of the books that they've published, of the success that they've received and the opportunities that they've had, and you look at that and you feel a little envious because you want the same things. And another example could be feeling envious of someone else's beauty, which I think is something we've probably all experienced, surely. When you see someone on Instagram and they're just drop dead gorgeous, you're ugh, why are they so perfect? How can they look like that? Why do I look like this? Every feature on my face is wrong compared to theirs. My life would be so easy if I looked like that. That's envy because you want what someone else has. You want their beauty, their features, their body. And envy could also be feeling envious of someone's achievements. If you want to be a content creator and you look at someone who is a content creator and they have 1 million subscribers, a gold play button on their wall, you might feel envious when you see all of their accomplishments and the things that they're boasting on their social media accounts. And you're oh, they achieved that and I never will. Or just I really, really want to do that too. And if we bring this back to the Mario Kart example, the example of envy in this instance would be everyone who's not in first place and looks at the person who is in first place and is oh, I want to be in first place so bad. So the emotions that go hand in hand with envy are longing, desire, and occasionally resentment, which is a toxic place that envy can eventually go to if left untreated, unresolved. And as I mentioned earlier, jealousy and envy are just results of coming to a certain conclusion following comparison. So the comparison can lead to jealousy or envy, but it doesn't have to. And it's not inherently negative or emotionally charged like jealousy and envy are. You're just making a judgment based on your comparison. So you could look at someone else's LinkedIn and their professional experience and their accomplishments and just compare it to yours, but it doesn't mean that you're making a judgment on it or saying that theirs is better. It could even be noticing that someone is further ahead in their career or a little further ahead in their path than you may be, but knowing that it doesn't mean that it's bad, that you're both just on individual journeys. So it doesn't mean you have to feel desire or longing along with it. Envy doesn't appear to have any rational basis. One example that's been really common for me is feeling envy of people who have more success on YouTube, social media, content in general than I do. And the reason that this doesn't have any rational basis is because there's no reason for me to look at all of these different people and feel envious about what they've done. A lot of them have been doing it much longer than me. Their success or lack of success doesn't affect me in any way. It doesn't have anything to do with me. And their success doesn't indicate a lack of success for me. So in that way, this feeling is kind of irrational. It's about how I perceive their progress in comparison to mine versus the actual facts of our progress, taking it all into consideration. And how looking at them maybe makes me feel like I'm behind in some way, even though I'm not. And this envy is fueled by the belief that if I did more things like them, or if I was more like them, or I did the things that they did, I would be more successful or happier or have more accomplishments. But it's just simply not true. And it's hard because even if you know these things, like logically, sometimes it doesn't change the fact that I can look at someone in a certain position and be like, oh, I want to be like them, or I want to have what they have. I want to do those things that they're doing, or like, why, like, when will it be my turn? That type of thinking. The other thing that I found by doing research on this topic that really interested me is that we envy people who are most like us in a meaningful way, which like immediately I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, the only people that I envy are people who I kind of deem to be like me in some way. Maybe they're similar to me in terms of their career, or they're in a similar vein as me, or we're just like similar people in general. But I realized like I've never envied someone who's completely different than me. I have never looked at a person who's making waves in the dental space because I don't have aspirations of being a dentist. I can even think back to when I was a kid, the people I was maybe envious about in terms of my friends were the friends that I felt like were the closest to me, like the most similar to me. Those were the friendships that I feel had the most competition. Maybe I felt they were really similar to me, but in a certain way I deemed them better. And so I wanted to just do that thing and be whatever that was that they were doing. Like if I see a psychologist who's doing great things in the psychology space, I don't feel envious of that. It doesn't really strike a chord with me. But if I see a content creator doing things that I really want to do, I'm feeling envious of that because it's really similar to how I view myself or what path I see myself on. And maybe they got to it first, but they've been on this journey longer and I end up feeling envious of them. The other thing about envy is that it's often shameful. We feel shame because we feel envious. And like none of us really want to have this negative desire. Like we don't want to feel envious of people. It often brings shame because at its core, it ultimately challenges our sense of self-worth and our values. And when we experience envy, it stems from the feeling that we're not measuring up to others or that we're lacking in some way. I think the other reason that envy feels shameful is because it honestly just makes us feel uncomfortable because we know we should feel proud of ourselves and we should feel happy for others and not jealous of their accomplishments. And we should be grateful for what we have rather than still longing for something else. So it's a very complex emotion with lots of nuances, but it's inevitably something that we do often feel. The other thing that envy can end up causing is, I don't know how to say this right. I've heard this word before, but schadenfreude, I think, which is crazy, but it's like, it's feeling a little bit content when maybe something doesn't go the best for like your perceived competitor. Like this is it's a terrible thing, but it is real. But at an unconscious level, you might feel a little happy or like a little bit of satisfaction or pleasure when someone else is suffering in some way, which like literally voicing this out loud, I'm like, what? That's terrible. But I think it happens. I think we do it and we don't even realize it. Like, I don't know, you're gonna go dance on stage and like someone at the competition hurts their foot and you're like, oh, darn, that's so sad for her. But kind of good for me. Like it's terrible, but it's real. And it happens because at an unconscious level, we might feel better about our own situation when someone who seems ahead of our experiences fails or struggles. So like we perceive them as being ahead of us, as better than us, essentially, as doing more than we are doing and being where we want to be. So when they kind of have a fumble or some failure in some way, we feel a little bit of satisfaction because it makes them seem like they aren't so much ahead of us. And you know how people say like the most miserable people, they just like want to make you miserable. They want to make everyone else miserable too. And it's because they're so miserable that everyone else's happiness makes them terrible. They want everyone to be miserable with them. Like misery loves company. But ultimately it's like if someone else is struggling, maybe we're not so far behind them. So it makes sense why we might feel these things, but it doesn't change the fact that it's maybe not the best emotion and not the most supportive thing you could feel. And even just recognizing that you feel that is a first step in being able to recognize that maybe you do have some complicated emotions you need to work through. And the big difference between jealousy and envy is jealousy isn't usually shameful. It's more warranted. It makes more sense. Whereas envy feels shameful because, like I said, it feels like we're not being grateful. We are preying on others' downfalls. But jealousy, it's like it's rightfully yours, so you should be jealous about it. Like your partner is, pursuing someone else. Yeah, you should be jealous. That's not okay. Or someone's coming to take your job. Like you should feel jealous or threatened by that. And it's not a shameful thing. Jealousy is also a lot more straightforward. Like in a marriage, maybe your husband is going to lunch with a girl at work and you don't like that and don't feel comfortable with it. It's very straightforward and you're like, I don't want you to go to lunch with her. But envy is like secretive and elusive and it kind of takes on disguises. It can almost be like something really good happens for someone and you find yourself being like, oh my God, I'm so happy for you. I'm so excited. That's amazing. But like you're saying it through like clenched teeth and on the inside you're like, oh, that's so amazing. I'm so excited for you. Like how great for you. Like that is envy, but you might be just parading and masquerading as it being happy for someone. Because what you're really feeling is like, "Oh, I hate that you got that raise. I hate that you have more success than me." And I saw this phrase, but I think it's really powerful that envy is the Achilles heel of the ego. Meaning it's like the weak spot of it that must be protected at all costs. But the flip side of this is that because it's this weak spot, we really do have the ability to explore and understand it better and get some insight and do some reflecting on the process. It can actually tell us a lot about our deepest fears and actually our desires and what we really want to do in life and what's actually important to us by analyzing these things. So before we get into how to stop it, let's talk about how they affect our lives. Constant comparison, like over comparison, ultimately drains our energy. It eats away at us, at our mental energy, at our emotional well-being, and it's exhausting because it feels like we're always chasing an invisible finish line. Like there's no real end. Like we're constantly chasing this thing that we're never going to get because it doesn't exist. It also stunts your growth, which is crazy to think about, but like if you're constantly focusing on being envious of someone else and wanting what they have, and like it almost can turn you into someone who's like obsessed with them. Like you can actually develop an obsession with this person because you're so focused on wanting to do what they do and wanting to see how they did it, but like you literally become obsessed to the point where you're not even focusing on your own life that much, you're focusing on them so much. When you're too focused on what others are doing, you actually neglect your own growth, which hearing that alone is enough to snap me out of it, turn off my phone and forget about everyone else, do what I know I can do and what I need to do and not even care about what other people are up to. And instead of using like jealousy as motivation, people often turn it to self-doubt, which also makes you shrink instead of rise. It also impacts your self-esteem. Chronic comparison chips away at our confidence. And the more you compare, the more you feel like you're not doing enough, even if you're actually doing really well. Like I said, I feel like my YouTube channel is doing great, but I look at other people doing even better than me and I'm like, oh, I'm not growing fast enough, or like I'm not doing enough, I'm not whatever it is. It's just not true. We're all on our own unique journey, and recognizing that always helps snap me out of that thought pattern. And the other thing is the way that social media comes into play here. With social media being such a huge thing nowadays, I feel like none of us are immune to the constant comparison of just seeing people pop up on your page and they're like the most beautiful person you've ever seen. People praise them for their beauty. Their video goes viral simply because they're beautiful. And you're looking at them, you're looking at their face with this perfect angle, all their makeup done or whatever. And it just makes it easier than ever to have somebody pop up on your phone and immediately make you wish that you looked like them or make you question yourself. But we do need to remind ourselves that social media is a highlight reel for everyone. And the other thing I think is important to remember here is when you're insecure about something, it's going to be the first thing that you look for on other people. So I can attest to this because when I first became aware of any insecurities that I had about myself, specifically my nose, which was the first insecurity I had because somebody like bullied me about it. After that, I would notice everyone's nose. I would be looking at everyone's nose. It was like the first thing I saw on people because I was constantly thinking about my own. So it was really easy for me to like look at a person on Instagram and be like, oh, she has a perfect nose. Like, I want that nose. But before, I didn't even care about people's noses. I was not looking at them. I didn't care what they looked like. And I didn't even think anything of them. I was just like, okay, it's a nose. Who cares? So I think that's telling in knowing like you might have certain insecurities that really speak to you. And when you see someone else who you perceive as having like a better version of the insecurity that you have, you might hyperfixate on it. Whereas in reality, it's not something you would have ever even noticed, or it's not something that would have been such a big deal to you. So like, I don't know, sometimes I just have to snap myself out of it and be like, okay, this person, yeah, maybe they have a great nose, but like maybe they don't like their ears and I like my ears. And not that it's about saying like, oh, you have this, but I have this, but it's about saying we all have things that maybe we feel more confident about and that we feel less confident about. And every person you look at who you're like, oh, they're so beautiful, they're so perfect, they're doing everything right, in their head, they're saying like, oh, I hate my toes or something, or they're like, I'm insecure about my teeth, but like you aren't insecure about those things. You just look at the best feature on that other person and think it's so perfect, but in their head, they're playing over and over all the insecurities they have about themselves. And we go on this constant cycle of looking at everybody else, and everyone's looking at everybody else thinking, oh, I like this about them, they're so perfect, this is so perfect on them. But in reality, we all have our fair share of mix of insecurities and traits that we may be confident in. So the moral of the story is comparing yourself to people is inevitable, but you don't need to come to these conclusions that because somebody has a different feature than you, they're somehow better than you. I think it's really important to remember deep down that everybody struggles with their own things and everyone's on a different journey. So you can look at something and idolize something about them, but they're insecure about that very thing. And it all comes down to perspective. So at the center of this, I think it's about building up your own self-worth, cultivating self-love. I have an entire podcast about self-love if you want to listen to that and feel like that's something you need to grow. But I just think it's really important to remember those things. And next, let's talk about how we can reframe jealousy and envy and comparison by shifting from scarcity to abundance. So when we're envious of someone or we're experiencing jealousy, we might have the thought, they have it, so I can't. You create this perceived lack when in reality, there's no lack. Like there's no lack of money that you can receive. There's no scarcity in the abundance you can receive and the opportunities that you can have. And because somebody else has it doesn't mean that you can't have it. In fact, it's often a sign that you are capable of doing it. Like when you see someone else do something you want to do, it's actually a sign that you can do it too, like that it's possible and that if they did it, so can you. So I think the first step to overcoming these feelings and turning them into something that's going to be productive for you is first acknowledging them, like acknowledging when you feel envy or jealousy and validating them, and then reminding yourself that just because they have it doesn't mean I can't. Their beauty or their success is not my lack, and their success actually means it's possible for me too. Next, the other really great thing to do here is allow this envy or jealousy to give you some insight into the feelings that are truly at the base of your insecurity and these feelings you're experiencing. By examining them, you actually obtain the most rich knowledge about your inner self. Envy is like your personal door to this. If you open it up and peel back the layers and see what's really going on under there, it's going to actually be a great tool for giving you some insight into yourself rather than ignoring it and letting it fester and maybe acknowledging it, but then just saying like, okay, I'm not going to think about it. It's still there. So let's peel back the layers. Let's open the door and see what's on the other side, meaning why are you feeling envious? And what is the envy trying to tell you? One example that I can think of is when I was growing up, I really wanted to be a YouTuber. From the time I started watching YouTube in like 5th grade, 6th grade, I wanted to be a YouTuber so bad. I think at the very beginning, I just consumed the content. I liked it and I would make my own videos actually like on my iPod Touch. But once the feeling of just like doing that for fun kind of grew into I want to do this. I want to do this for a living. I want to be just like them. Not exactly like them in the sense I wanted to do everything they were doing, but like I wanted to just be in the position of being a YouTuber just like they were. So as I got older and, I maybe tried a few times to start a channel, but it didn't work out because I didn't know how to do it. It was too time consuming. There was just so much I didn't know. I was scared of people that I knew seeing it, like all these fears that I had, whatever. I got to a point where I couldn't watch YouTube anymore. I honestly stopped even going on the app for like 6 months at a certain point, because even though I like loved YouTube, because I couldn't even handle watching these people live their best lives, do all these fun things, go on brand trips, get all this PR, just literally be a YouTuber and create the content that I wanted to create. Like I couldn't stand to see people doing what I wanted to do, and it made me crazy. I stopped watching it. I remember vividly just being like, I literally cannot watch YouTube anymore, and I just watched movies instead. All the time that I had spent on YouTube, I just spent it on Netflix watching shows and movies. But then after a certain point, I was like, you know what? This is a sign. Like this is trying to tell me something. If I literally can't even open the YouTube app because I'm so disgusted by these people, not disgusted, but like I'm so bothered by the fact that they're making videos, what does that tell me about myself? Well, it tells me that I want to make videos too. I want to be in the position they're in. I want to have a YouTube channel. I want to have a platform. Okay, so now with this new insight and this new information, I can decide to start making videos and sort of follow those instincts that I was feeling rather than letting the envy consume me. So the energy that I was putting into being envious of people who had what I wanted, I turned it to fuel that was going to power my journey, that was going to put me on this path that I wanted to be on. Another example I have that just like demonstrates envy is when I was in college, I was going down the oceanography path. That was what I really was interested in. The environmental science department was already, I don't want to say quite small, but like you would get to know the people that were in your department. You know what I mean? Like I would see a lot of the same people in a lot of the same classes. So there was this class, this upper level oceanography class that I had, and there was this girl that sat next to me. I think we were the only two undergrads in the whole class. So everybody else was like a grad student, which means they've already done their 4 years of college and they're on to like their master's or their doctorate. So we were the only two undergrads. So we kind of like clinged to each other, you know? And I started to develop feelings of envy towards this girl, which I didn't even realize at the time, but I'm like thinking back and I'm like, yeah, that was envy. She was so on it. She would be on her laptop like the entire time at class. Like if we were taking notes on our laptop, I would just look over and see her. She would always be on her email. She'd be answering emails feverishly. I'm like, who is she emailing? What is she doing? And if I would glance at her email, I would see she was corresponding with people, inquiring about internships and scholarships, and she was doing outreach to people in the department, in the field, just to understand more about them. And then she'd pull up her LinkedIn and I'd look over and see her LinkedIn, and it was just decked out with everything. She had so many connections. I'd see her just connecting with people, everyone that was like remotely kind of on the path that she wanted to be on. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is she doing? Like, why? I don't even know. Who is she emailing? Like, literally, who is she emailing as a college student? Because I was not emailing people like that. Like, it's one thing to email your professor or like a student from class, but this girl was doing like full on business emails, and she was a year younger than me. Okay. So I was like a junior and she was a sophomore. She would be doing this every day, and every day I would have the same feelings of like, oh my gosh, what is this girl doing? And like I would feel totally inadequate compared to her. And then when she added me on LinkedIn, actually I think after I graduated I saw her add me. I looked at her LinkedIn and it was just decked out. She had every internship. She had so much experience. She was doing everything. She's doing volunteer work. She's gotten all these amazing opportunities. She has all these connections. And I'm like, literally like, what is going on? And it made me feel so weird. I felt like I didn't even want to look at her LinkedIn. I didn't even care. I was like, I don't even want to add her back because this just makes me angry. Like, please. But what it was ultimately telling me was I want to have those internships too. I want to be doing these things too. I want to be doing outreach to people and making connections with people. And I want to be getting the same opportunities she's getting too. Like I want to be on this path as well. That's what the envy was telling me, which I kind of knew and I did realize, but at the same time, I don't know, something about that path almost didn't feel 100% right for me. And I started getting sucked into the whole idea of it and trying to just add everyone on LinkedIn. But I almost got to a point where I was like, I don't even know if this is what I want to do. I don't know if I want to work on a boat, and I don't Anyways, the moral of the story is I was 100% feeling envious of this girl, and the reason why was because she made me feel like the things I was doing in terms of outreach, in terms of experience, was not enough. And it gave me a sense of lack because I felt like if she's doing all this and getting all these experiences, why would they ever pick me over her? She's clearly way more qualified. She has way more experience. She's doing way more. Her LinkedIn looks perfect. Like I'm nothing compared to her, which is obviously not true, but those are the feelings that I was feeling. This is all to say that when you peel back the envy, there's always something underneath. There's something there that will tell you more about why you're feeling this way. Instead of putting those feelings towards hyper fixating on that person and becoming obsessed with them, you can take those feelings and put them into doing something that's going to put you on the path that you secretly want to be on. And I say secretly, but I really mean, just deep down you want to be on. You can even go as far as to say, when someone gets this opportunity you're feeling envious of, what is it about this that I actually want? Because you might be actually glamorizing it in your head, but it might not actually be everything you want. Like if you see someone get a promotion and you're immediately like, oh, I'm so envious. Do you actually want that job? Or do you just want the freedom that it offers? Or do you just perceive them getting a promotion as an indication of their value and as like a validation of their work and you want that too? Like when I think back to it, like I said, I didn't want to do these internships on a boat. Like I really did not want to go on a boat. I didn't want to work at a fishery, but she was doing all these things and it made me feel like pressured to do them. I mean, I was creating the pressure, but I think deep down what I wanted was to feel qualified in the space that I was in and to get opportunities that aligned with me. So in addition to those things I just mentioned, let's talk about practical tools you can use to let go of jealousy and envy and over comparison. The first is to just practice mindfulness. So being aware. As I've mentioned, the first step is just recognizing and acknowledging when jealousy and envy are creeping in, but this truly is the first step. You need to be aware of what you're feeling and aware of your emotions. So once you're feeling a little twinge of jealousy, like when something happens and you're like, why are they getting this opportunity? Think about it for a second and say, is this thought helping me or hurting me? Like genuinely think about it. And oftentimes it's going to be hurting you. If you look at someone on TikTok and you're like, oh, they're so perfect. Why don't I look like them? Why is their body so perfect? I need to look like that. What is their workout routine? Sit and think, is this thought helping me or hurting me? I mean, we're taking it back to like kindergarten level things with that, but it's so true because sometimes you'll go down this whole rabbit hole and realize like, I don't even care enough to entertain this. Second, is with gratitude. The quickest way to shift yourself out of this lack mentality, this lack mindset, feeling inadequate and not enough is by focusing on the things that you do have. And this works so good and so fast. So if you're like, oh my gosh, she has 1 million subscribers. How did she get so many? Like, I need to get that many right now. I sit and think, you know what, girl? No. You have a silver play button on your wall. That is amazing. That is a huge accomplishment. And not the play button. It's not that the play button is the accomplishment, but I did it. Made my channel. I posted my videos. That is something to be proud of. I talk with people every day who inspire me, who have found my channel and want to connect with me. And that is amazing. Like that is truly something to be grateful for. I don't need 1 million subscribers and I don't need it right now. Like I am totally content and happy with where I am right now. I'm already so grateful for everything that I have. So you can easily shift your mindset by doing that in whichever situation you're in. I mean, if it's in terms of looks, sit back and focus on 3 features you love about yourself. Oh, she has a really cute small nose that I want, but I love my eyes, my hair, and my lips. I'm grateful to look the way that I look, and I'm grateful to be unique. And the other thing you can do is limit social media consumption. This one's obvious, but I mean, if there are certain people like you follow, I don't even know, Cindy Kimberly. I remember back in the day, back when she was on Tumblr, if you know who I'm talking about, I would see pictures of her and like, I couldn't handle it. I was like, how does she look that perfect? I can't. So I didn't follow her. And sometimes it just has to be that. Sometimes it just comes down to that. And it doesn't mean you like hate that person, but maybe you just don't need to see pictures of their face every single day, especially when you're trying to cultivate a stronger sense of self-worth and self-confidence. So if there are people that make you feel not the best about yourself, maybe you just unfollow them. Follow content that inspires you instead. And overall, just limit your social media time, especially on, I want to say like short form apps. I feel like those are the worst culprit because it's just so fast. It's just over and over and over. New people, new faces. You can't even control what's going to come up. And that can be a little toxic. And the last thing is just cultivating your own journey. Like that's truly so empowering to think about. I think the coolest thing to think about is the fact that your journey is going to be completely unique and different from everyone else's. The things you're doing, the way that you do them is your superpower. It's literally what makes you you. Take a second and think about that. You do things in a way that nobody else does them, that no one else can see them, and that's just a fact. So the way that you do things is going to look different than other people. I mean, the way that you look is going to be different than other people, but that's what makes you special and that's what makes you unique. Like, truly, truly preach it. Say it to yourself over and over and over because it's really important and you need to remember that. Success and happiness are not a race. It's going to come in its own time. If you stay focused on doing you, doing the things that you feel called to do, that you feel inspired to do, the things that make you happy, that is what's going to bring you success and true fulfillment and happiness rather than hyperfixating on someone else and letting it consume you. The last things I want to say in terms of just like self-confidence and self-acceptance are confidence doesn't come from achieving outside things. It comes from how you talk to yourself, how you treat yourself, and just accepting yourself as who you are. I honestly think my confidence comes from, like I said, following my heart and doing the things that make me happy and excited, the things that feel right. So the confidence doesn't come from achieving something and then being like, okay, now that I did this, I'm worthy, because you'll achieve that and then there will be something else on the horizon. It has to be from a deeper down place. So if that's something you struggle with and you feel like you don't currently feel super confident in yourself, try to work on building self-trust instead of seeking external validation. And I truly go into this whole topic of self-love, self-confidence, self-esteem in my podcast episode that's all about falling in love with yourself. So listen to that if that feels like that could be helpful for you. But I also want to say, celebrate others. Like, a really surprising way to reduce jealousy is just genuinely being happy for other people. When you genuinely cheer for others, you invite the same energy into your life. And not only that, but it's a great place to maybe like redirect your feelings. If you're feeling strong feelings about them accomplishing something, maybe try to turn it, try to channel it. And I'm not talking about saying like, oh, I'm so happy for you, good for you, but like try to genuinely be happy for them. Sit back for a moment and think, you know what? Yes, I want to achieve this eventually. I hope to someday do this, but at the same time, I'm really happy for them and I'm proud of them. Like, on a human level, it's great that they did this. This is amazing. I'm going to be happy for them and I'm going to celebrate their win. I can celebrate my win when it comes time. And that's that. So to just wrap things up, I want to reiterate the goal here is to keep the focus on yourself. And I don't mean that in a selfish way, like only think about yourself, but I mean, rather than looking at others and becoming obsessed with them, wanting to copy their route, their path, and their story, focus on your own unique path, your own story, your own voice, and the place that you're going with your life, and bringing your own dreams into fruition. The only person you should compare yourself to is you, maybe working on improving aspects of your own life or your own self rather than trying to be someone else, because that's never going to happen. Also, just know that letting go of jealousy and envy and even just the habit of over comparison is a process. It's going to be a gradual thing, but the more you learn to recognize it and nip it in the bud and kind of turn those feelings to productive ones, the better off you're going to be. So your path is unique, so are your dreams. Focus on your own story, celebrate others, and let go of the comparison game. That's the whole moral of the story. And that is where we're going to wrap things up today. I really hope this resonated with you. I hope you found this helpful because I feel like this is so important and we need to be able to do this. Like, this is a tool you need to be able to have in your repertoire to know how to deal with these feelings when they arise. I would love if you comment on this episode something that you maybe have struggled with in terms of jealousy or envy, or a way that you actually help yourself when you feel those things. I love reading your guys' comments. You could also send me a DM on my personal Instagram, Sophie diloreto_, or at glowandtell.pod, the podcast Instagram, if you want to talk to me personally. Lastly, I would love if you gave this podcast a rating on Spotify and on Apple. It really helps me out and I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon.